Hi, Josh Fletcher is with us today, and Josh is joining us in the middle of Mental Health Awareness Week. Josh is a psychotherapist and anxiety specialist, author of UK best-selling book Panicking About Panic, and author of Practical About Panic, host of the Panic Pod podcast, and presents a show on Wellbeing Radio. So it's safe to say you are very much an authority on the matter. Is that right?
If you say so, Pat. And I actually cringed all the way through that. I can't take it off. It's just like, maintaining the professionalism.
I started doing my research earlier on, and I was running out of ink in my pen as I was jotting down all the things that you do. So, we wanted to just ask you a few questions on behalf of our membership, that we can offer them some practical advice. We'll just jump straight in with the first one. So in light of the furlough scheme being extended to October, people potentially facing a much longer time off than they'd maybe anticipated or planned for, what practical advice would you offer to people who might be struggling with the prospect of that?
Okay. That's a really good question. I've been working with a lot of people and a lot of agencies across the UK with people who are in the furlough scheme. I've been working with a lot of people who have been kind of struggling at home, people who are perhaps getting anxious, people that have been kind of, since having to kind of stay in a lot, I've been faced with a lot of difficulties in terms of having to sit with their own thoughts, have to sit with their own feelings, trying to adapt and habituate to a different kind of lifestyle, a different routine. A lot of people focused on that routine. Now, what I would say is if anyone's kind of struggling at home during all this, first of all, I say, well, it's okay. I think if you picture the nation's average anxiety level, let's say if it's here, the whole situation's kind of going to bring it up a little bit anyway. And that's probably going to evoke some feelings in you. Yes, that one is okay. This part of this is normal. I'm not saying suck it up. I'm saying this is normal to feel a bit more on edge. Secondly, I would do obviously the basic obvious things that are circulating around. Try and do a little bit of exercise. Try and keep on the same kind of page as people you're living with. If you are living with people, try and make the extra effort to be diplomatic and get along with them, because I know a lot of people being stuck inside a space that can add to friction a lot. Just doing things like just looking after yourself, trying not to rely too much on unhealthy vices, lots of drinking and eating poorly. They're obvious ones, but you don't really need a kind of psychotherapist to tell you that that's kind of circulating around. What I say is I look at kind of, if you are struggling, look at your internal dialogue. And your internal dialogue is just basically how you're speaking to yourself. What I mean by that is that some of us can be very self-critical. So if you're someone who's susceptible to mild, moderate, and severe depression, if you're someone who's very susceptible to anxiety, which I am, I work with the subject, but I still get anxious. What I recommend is just be mindful of how you're talking to yourself. So if you're someone who's very driven and likes to construct endless to-do lists and tries to keep on top of things, just be careful that you don't exhaust yourself, don't reach burnout. Try not to distract yourself to the point of exhaustion. I worked with someone the other day and I said, right, you can't stop. You don't have the skill to stop, which is essential for rest and recuperation and well-being. So what we did is we wrote down their to-do list together, and then we distinguished what was a want and what was a need. And we wrote down all the needs. So, you need to put the bins out. You need to have a wash. I'm not saying that to you, Pat. You might. You need to do all these. You need to do all these things, and that's okay. Feed your kids. That's not an option. But at the same time, there's wants, and people are feeling the pressure of those wants sometimes. So it's, I want to use the time to learn Mandarin or become grade 7 on piano. It's like, well, that's a want, and if you're adding that in the essential pile, you're going to add more and more stress. Your body has a balance between stress and rest. The more the stress goes up, I don't know what this is, just go with it. The more the stress goes up and the more the rest comes down, that's when we're more susceptible to anxiety and depression. Anxiety in particular, because if we start running on adrenaline all the time, we end up just sat at home stewing with adrenaline pumping through our systems, listening to all these what if thoughts, feeling frightened, having weird sensations. And that's when you know that's your mind and body's way of saying, just stop a little bit. So that's my main advice for people who are going through, if you are on the furlough scheme and you are at home, you've got to look out for that internal dialogue and start to be compassionate with yourself. Don't do what isn't necessary, but obviously do what is necessary, and make sure you take time out to stop. And obviously do the other things that are conducive to well-being that you see circulating everywhere, common sense stuff.
Yeah, that's good. And then I think of what you said about trying to be hyper-organized as well. I personally myself have felt that, as you know, work in events where we're usually quite well-organized people. We have a meticulous plan that we follow, and everything being a bit more open-ended.
Yeah,
I've had to sort of try and change my own working life towards. So conversely, on the other side of that, obviously we've seen the lockdown measures start to be eased and lifted bit, with an eagerness to get the economy moving again, which I'm sure we all agree is important as well. So a lot of people may be anxious about the prospect of returning to work following a prolonged period of time off. And what advice would you have on that from that angle?
Brilliant. I'd like to. I did an interview the other day with the I newspaper about agoraphobia, and I'd like to kind of draw from the points that I made from that, which is what's really interesting, particularly if people are anxious to kind of get back out there. First of all, I'd say that that's okay and actually very natural, and I'd also explain why that's really natural. So in our brain, we have something called the amygdala, which is the old lizard part of our brain that's the fastest, but not the cleverest part of our brain that's there to save us. And its only function is to look around, scanning for dangers, and then release a load of anxiety when it feels like there is a danger. And the way that becomes activated is through conditioning. So if you're at home and you've been at home for a long time and you've not seen friends and family and work colleagues, or even just walking around the town centre, what you've been doing is sat at home and listening to all these reports of lots of deaths and danger and social distancing. It's being drip fed and drip fed and drip fed. The amygdala in our brain has now been conditioned for some people that other people are dangerous. And that's a good thing, because it wants you to be a bit more mindful of that. So if you're quite anxious and oh God, I've got to go outside and I've got to do all that, you might be susceptible to having those thoughts about, what if I get the virus? What if someone comes near me? What if someone gets ill? What if I lose my job? Whatever. You're supposed to have those thoughts because that's the amygdala doing its job. So yeah, the first thing I'd say is that's okay. If you're it's full of this kind of negative anticipation about the prospect of returning, that is absolutely normal. And actually, I would say probably the majority of people have that. What's really nice is that you can turn the amygdala off, and it's quite simply, you turn it off by doing it anyway, but you do it willfully. So the more you go out, the more you practice going out and doing that, the easier things get. Hopefully, and I say that quite strongly, hopefully when as things start to get better, that will help the process along and the anxiety to come down. Anticipatory anxiety is extremely normal at the moment, and actually it kind of goes away once you actually start doing it. It's a bit like any phobia. If you're bitten by a dog, the next time you see a dog, the amygdala is going to go, watch out, there's a dog, because it's trying to save you. And it's doing exactly the same for people returning to work, going outside, going back to normality. Is it okay yet? You need to look out for it. You need to look out. And that's supposed to happen. It's actually a very healthy thing for your brain to do. Also, if you are kind of struggling a little bit, when you go back, talk to someone about it. You know, ideally talk to people that are close to you. But if you haven't got someone close to you, then maybe talk to someone like a professional. A big myth about talking to people is that you think you need to be rock bottom in order to talk. It's like, no, you don't. It's like, actually, I found it quite difficult this week. And it's really helpful to kind of talk to someone about it. Like, actually, yeah, I've felt quite fearful this week and it's been playing on my mind. That's absolutely fine too. Do remain cautious and things. That's okay. Do remain a bit, tell yourself it's okay to be a bit anxious. And if things get a bit too much, kind of, talk about it and things. And I'm sure if you're in a place of employment that includes organizations and a large degree of kind of upper management, there should be something in place to look after your well-being as well. And if there's not, ask some questions. I would say it's okay to be anxious and turn off that amygdala by being careful and doing it anyway. That's what I do with most phobias and things. And also as well, talking of the amygdala, it's not just going out, but it's people in general. So I saw my friend briefly the other day, socially distanced, of course. I was in my car and he was putting something in the back of my car for me. And I saw him and I could feel my brain going, is this a threat? Is this a threat? And he looked really weird. And he looked at me the same and he was looking at me really weird. And we were like, huh? And it wasn't just, I've not seen you for ages. It was, wow, this is really weird. Like I really, really want to kind of give you a hug and chat with you. At the same time, my amygdala's going,
don't do any of those things.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not good. But that's just an example of the kind of conflict. So if you're feeling a bit weird, that's absolutely okay.
I think, what you said about talking and having open conversations, a lot of the time you find that you spiral these things in your own mind, I think. And if you just let the words come out of your mouth, you'll find that someone else is feeling similar. And, a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yeah, definitely. It becomes normalized as well, which I think is really important. When you normalize stuff, you feel less alone. And that kind of helps with symptoms of anxiety and depression as well.
I know that normalization is something you're quite keen to advocate as well, isn't it?
Definitely, and that's what I do when I'm talking about my podcast. When I do anything media related, I'm very honest with my own struggles as well, because it doesn't matter what gender you are with it and stuff, but I think particularly being quite a youngish man, it's there's not much out there of people talking about it, so I like to do it in a way that's trying to model it perhaps for other people, like it's okay to struggle and things like that. Whilst at the same time being really cool as well. I think that's really important.
Well, it's worked for you, hasn't it? So that trend of normalization, I'd probably like to pick up on, because a lot of workplaces will probably going to look quite different in the future, following everything that's happening at the moment. So is there anything, surrounding mental health or anxiety that you foresee becoming permanent practices in the workplace, or anything that you would like to see?
I'd like to see a change to the kind of the status quo in terms of 9 to 5, things like that. If people are struggling, I'd like to see more flexibility. If people can decide their working hours, as long as they clock their working hours, that would be nice. I would like to see more kind of mental health friendly rooms in organizations and things. My friend in Bristol, I can't remember what she works for now, but she's got they've got like a room in the back where if you want a timeout or even like a nap, you can go, as long as you obviously clock your hours and that, which is really helpful, because if you're someone, say, who's a parent of several kids and you've got to get up and do your parent duties and then come in for a certain time, you're probably going to be burnt out by that time. And then you're doing that and you're hammering work, hammering deadlines, coming home, doing the same again. You're asking for burnout. You're asking for, you're not getting that balance that I was talking about with your first question. I'd like there to be better signposting. I think signposting's a bit kind of be with some people a bit lazy. Like, oh, contact Mind, contact the Samaritans, but at the same time, it's not very inspiring. I'd like to see more integration between the psychotherapy sector and private and public sector businesses. I'd like that to be a direct place where you can go. Be like, oh, you're struggling? Well, go and see this person. There's a small towards that with mental health wellbeing officers, which in some cases they work really well, and in some cases I've heard some absolute horror stories. But that's still, as a symbol, a good step in the right direction. Also, kind of from the perspective of people with disabilities as well, I think what this has shown is that people don't need to jump on the busy train to work to 9 p.m. and stuff like that. I think people who are disabled, this can show that people can work from home and utilize the very powerful minds and abilities of people that are perhaps less physically able. That's something that I think that something good that can come from this. I think this just kind of, I'd like more attention just to be brought to it. I don't have all the answers and the solutions, but I think it would be nice just for people to have a conversation about what can happen back at work. And it would be nice for the workers to bring that as well to upper management. And if upper management are there able to listen to it as well. Because I believe, if a happy worker is a good worker. It's a cliche, but it's true. And if you've got someone who's looking after their mental health, and they're happy and balanced, they're going to be more efficient as well, aren't they? And they're going to not just for themselves but for others. If you've got like a team that are all happy, that's a dream. But yeah, there's a better better signpost posting, more integration, a kind of revamp of kind of working hours, lots more flexibility, and actually kind of looking at what's necessary when it comes to, do we all need to be sat in the office, or can we actually make accessibility to employment easier for people who are disabled?
Yeah, that's all great points, and like you said, happy people are productive people, and I know that these were conversations that I was having in my own workplaces over the previous 18 months. And I wouldn't want those conversations to be dropped now as a result of a lack of momentum or something else taking light as it has done. So yeah, hopefully for the future we'll have that. But yeah, some great advice there, Josh, and thanks for jumping on a call with me and talking.
No problem. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Thanks for asking me and trusting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And we'll pop some links on for your podcasts and your radio shows and your...
Yeah, feel free to listen to them. They're available.
A wealth of information out there that we can take forward and have nice, positive, productive workplaces when we return.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Pat.
Thanks, Josh. See you soon. Bye.